We have heard absolutely nothing from her, nothing from any of her legal representatives, nothing from the DOJ. So she has left us no choice. She didn't show up to her scheduled deposition, which we have under law for her to actually come. The Republicans also agreed to that subpoena. They released it with Chairman Comer. And we've heard absolutely nothing from the AG. But what we do know is that half of the files have not been released. Survivors have been, of course, as you know, doxxed and put in danger because their names and information have been put actually in the files that were supposed to be redacted. And so there has been absolutely, in this case, a massive cover-up that's been directed by the AG, and she has not answered her question. So she must come under oath, and stay tuned because imminently that contempt charge is going to be filed, and we expect that process to go.
Half of the Epstein files are still missing. The survivors were supposed to be protected. Instead, their names, their personal information were published inside documents that were never meant to see the light of day. And the woman who was supposed to answer for all of it, she didn't show up. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is a congressional record. Pam Bondi, the former Attorney General of the United States, was subpoenaed under oath by a bipartisan committee with a date, with legal obligation, and she ghosted it, just like the files she was supposed to hand over.
Obviously, that date came and went, and Bondi refused to appear because, after all, why would we expect the nation's former top law enforcement official to actually follow the law? And keep in mind, Bondi seems to have made this decision to refuse to appear in defiance of even the Republican chair of the committee. A couple of weeks back, it became clear that the DOJ was trying to claim that because Bondi was no longer AG, that somehow the subpoena was no longer valid. The Assistant Attorney General wrote to James Comer, chair of the Oversight Committee, quote, "Ms. Bondi no longer holds that office. As a result, because Ms. Bondi no longer can testify in her official capacity as Attorney General, the department's position is that the subpoena no longer obligates her to appear on April 14th. We kindly ask that you confirm that the subpoena is withdrawn." Only small problem, the office of the Attorney General was not subpoenaed.
So let's talk about what's really going on. Because the deeper you go into this story, the worse it gets. Jeffrey Epstein's case never truly closed. The man died in federal custody, officially a suicide, with cameras mysteriously offline and guards mysteriously asleep. What should have followed was complete transparency, a full release of files documenting his network, the names, the meetings, the money, the power. Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act specifically to force that disclosure, and the DOJ, under Bondi's leadership, refused to fully comply. Half the files, gone, withheld, buried. And when Congress demanded answers, Bondi agreed to appear. She even told committee members she would follow the law. Those were her words. She would follow the law. She didn't. April 14th came and went. No Pam Bondi, no legal representatives, not a single call. And in the silence, the DOJ sent a letter, a calculated legal maneuver, claiming that because Bondi had since been removed as AG, the subpoena was somehow no longer valid, that she was subpoenaed in her official capacity, and since that capacity no longer existed, neither did the obligation. There's just one problem. The subpoena wasn't issued to the office. It was issued to Pam Bondi, the person, by name. The office was irrelevant. The law doesn't disappear just because someone quits or gets fired.
Recent interview.
First, the subpoena that we put in place does not have any mention of whether the fact, she's AG or not. The subpoena is for Pam Bondi. And so whether she is in the position or not, she legally is required to appear before the Oversight Committee on April the 14th, which is a date that Comer set for her to come. We've checked this all already out today with all the lawyers and the attorneys. And so she now has to come testify. She can come and do the right thing and finally be honest about actually what happened, why the cover-up, why 50% of the files have not been released. And look, she no longer has to work for Donald Trump. So
Here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. This wasn't just Democrats pushing back.
Obligation to testify before the Oversight Committee about the Epstein files and the White House cover-up. Our bipartisan subpoena is to Pam Bondi, whether she is the Attorney General or not. She must come in to testify immediately, and if she defies the subpoena, we will begin contempt charges in the Congress. The survivors deserve justice. And in fact, early signs point to the fact that even Republicans agreed with Garcia's position. According to a spokesperson for the Republican-led House Oversight Committee, quote, "The Department of Justice has stated Pam Bondi will not appear on April 14th for a deposition since she is no longer Attorney General and was subpoenaed in her capacity as Attorney General. The committee will contact Pam Bondi's personal counsel to discuss next steps regarding scheduling her deposition." Quote, scheduling her deposition. In other words, doesn't exactly sound like the DOJ's gambit will have worked here, considering even James Comer's representative is
Republican members of the House Oversight Committee signed on too. Nancy Mace, others. A bipartisan coalition putting it in writing. Bondi is still legally obligated.
Seem too intent on following. And one reason for that is Comer right now already took a hard line on enforcing compliance with subpoenas. Remember, he threatened the Clintons with contempt of Congress for nearly defying their own subpoena.
Well, here we are again. I don't think it's any secret. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton joined her husband in defying a bipartisan lawful congressional subpoena to show up today. I think what's most disappointing to the Oversight Committee is the fact that we have, in good faith, negotiated with the Clintons' attorneys for 5 months. Throughout the past 5 months, they've implied to us they were trying to make a date work. In fact, the last date we had, they notified us 3 days beforehand, said that they would love to come, but they have a funeral to attend. And we have bent over backwards to try to schedule the Clinton. No, I'm still talking. I'm still talking. Go ahead. Hey, get him out of here. You're not even a reporter. Get out of here. So here's the situation. We're going to hold both Clintons in criminal contempt of Congress. We believe that because this subpoena was issued in a bipartisan fashion, the Democrats acted the day that the subpoenas were voted on in the subcommittee like they wanted the Clintons to.
Her removal doesn't erase what she did as AG. It doesn't erase the questions about decisions made under her leadership.
And guess what? They showed up as the result of that. So now we've got precedent. James Comer was prepared to hold the Clintons in contempt. They showed up. And so now, because they tried to turn the Clintons into the boogeymen here, they painted themselves into a corner as it relates to Pam Bondi. And look, I know that shame is virtually non-existent in today's GOP, but it's still going to be especially difficult, pretty damn hard, for James Comer to square that circle if he decides that the rules only apply to Democrats.
If anything, now that she no longer works for Trump, there is nothing stopping her from finally telling the truth.
Another reason that Comer doesn't seem to want to die on this hill, he won't have the votes, because even Republican Nancy Mace has made her position clear that Pam Bondi must testify. She, along with Ro Khanna, sent a letter to James Comer just weeks back saying, quote, "We urge you to make clear former Attorney General Pam Bondi remains obligated to comply with the Oversight Committee's subpoena and appear for her scheduled deposition on April 14th. We moved to subpoena Pam Bondi, and the committee voted to approve this motion on a bipartisan basis because the U.S. Department of Justice still has not complied with the Epstein Files Transparency Act, and
unless the truth is exactly what someone powerful doesn't want told." Meanwhile, the survivors, the actual victims at the center of this story, have been put at risk. Their names, their information, published inside documents that were supposed to be redacted. Survivors who already endured the unimaginable, now doxxed, now exposed, while the people they've accused remain shielded behind legal machinery, political loyalty, and deliberate silence. And contempt charges? They're coming. Ranking Member Robert Garcia made that crystal clear. The committee has the legal standing, they have the votes, and they have precedent. Because this same committee, under the same chair, threatened the Clintons with criminal contempt when they hesitated. And the Clintons showed up.
Because serious questions regarding the DOJ's non-compliance and their handling of the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and his associates while she was Attorney General. The removal of Pam Bondi as Attorney General does not diminish the committee's legitimate oversight interest in seeking her sworn testimony or the need for accountability and information about files withdrawn from the public by the DOJ. On the contrary, it makes her sworn testimony even more important, especially with respect to actions she took as Attorney General, matters already under investigation, and decisions made under her leadership. When Pam Bondi appeared last month for a briefing, you reiterated you would continue to pursue her sworn testimony and would discuss holding her in contempt of Congress if she failed to.
So the question now is simple. Will the rules apply to Pam Bondi the same way they applied to the Clintons?
She also stated that she would follow the law with respect to her subpoena, which clearly requires her to appear before the Oversight Committee. As you know, Congress's oversight authority does not end when an official leaves office. In fact, just last year, the committee issued subpoenas to 6 former attorneys general, spanning multiple administrations of both political parties. The American people deserve answers about whether Congress was misled and whether information is being withheld by the DOJ. We ask you to publicly reaffirm that Pam Bondi must appear on April 14th for.
Or does justice in this country run on a 2-tier system? The DOJ under Trump won't prosecute her. We know that. But the DOJ won't always belong to Trump. And the people who decided the law didn't apply to them, they will eventually have to answer for it. To a committee, to a court, or to him.
You've already got enough Republicans to enforce this subpoena, then it quite literally isn't worth it to fight what would amount to be a losing battle. So all eyes are on the House Oversight Committee for what comes next as it relates to Pam Bondi, but I'll offer just one more warning. While Bondi might feel invincible right now because Trump currently runs the DOJ and they'll never prosecute her, he won't run the DOJ forever, and the next DOJ will have the ability to do what this DOJ won't. So while crime might feel legal now, just know that the gravy train is coming to an end, and we won't forget the people who decided that the law didn't apply to them.